Before King Vong's passing, he was a regular in and out of jail. On November 21st, 2012, King Vong's first arrest was for unlawful possession of a firearm. Since this arrest, King Vong, otherwise known as Davon Bennett, was placed on law enforcement's watch list. This led to King Vong's July 24, 2014 arrest. Bennett was arrested in connection to firearm usage against a rival street team from the month of May. During this incident, Malcolm Stuckey passed alongside 2 others injured. King Vong was charged with 1 count of attempting to take someone's life. This incident took place at the 5700 block of South LaSalle Street in Inglewood, Chicago. While King Vong was in jail, awaiting his trial to begin, the famous incident happened of Vong lighting a fire inside his jail block. King Vong and several other inmates set fire to the Cook County Jail. From these photos, you see King Vong wearing the white shirt and white pants, standing around being a lookout, while another inmate is standing on the exit sign above the white door. While looking for the guards, the inmates noticed they headed for the lunch break. King Vong and the several inmates grabbed a few shirts and clothes from their jail cells, created a pile of them near the guard's office, and let it begin. When the fire begins, you see King Vong walk towards the corner of the screen before making his way around the block, grabbing extra clothing from other cells. Once adding them to the fire, King Vong is seen walking up the stairs into his jail cell. With the cell block clouding up with smoke, the camera's vision becomes blurry. At this point in time, guards barge into the room and handle the situation. After witnesses failed to testify in 2017, all charges were dropped, and rapper King Vong was released from jail. With King Vong released from jail, Lil Durk forced Vong into the studio to begin his music career. King Vong starting his music career was supposed to be a way for him to stay out of trouble. This didn't last long, as in 2019, rappers Lil Durk and King Vong were out in Atlanta at a recording studio. After their session was complete, the 2 rappers headed towards a restaurant across the street named The Varsity. Walking up the Varsity parking lot, the 2 Chicago rappers noticed a man named Alexander Witherspoon standing in the parking lot. Noticing the rival street member, King Vong and Lil Durk quickly ran to the side of the building. Video surveillance caught the 2 rappers putting up the hoods of their sweaters before running over to Alexander. Their surveillance shared a small conversation happening before the 2 rappers started robbing Alexander. Witherspoon claimed the 2 rappers stole $30,000 cash from him, as well as snatching his diamond chain from around his neck. While in the process of it going down, Alexander's car keys fell out of his pocket. King Vong proceeded to grab the keys and steal his vehicle with Lil Durk. While driving away from Witherspoon, one of the rapper's arms came out of the window and used a firearm towards Witherspoon. Lil Durk and King Vong proceeded to drive away, hitting the highway before quickly going to a side street where they abandoned the car and ran on foot. A warrant went out for Lil Durk and King Vong's arrests. Before throwing himself into jail, Lil Durk released his hit song, Turn Myself In, claiming he's innocent in this case, and that he will get through it with no issues. A judge granted Lil Durk and King Vong bond in this court case. Durk's bond was $2,500,000, with King Vong's being $300,000. Conditions were made that neither of them were allowed near firearms and can't have contact with anybody involved in the court case. This is the reason Lil Durk wasn't with King Vong the day he sadly passed in Atlanta, in case you didn't know. The judge in his court case recently has found probable cause to charge Lil Durk for the act alongside 5 other charges involving street activities and holding firearms as a convicted felon. Since King Vong's passing, all attention has been directed towards Lil Durk in this case. While released on bond, on October 30th, 2020, King Vong released his debut studio album, Welcome to O Block. 1 week later, on November 6th, King Vong, with a select few friends, family members, and business partners, met at a club in downtown Atlanta celebrating the release of his newest album. While Atlanta is home to one of the best recording studios, best way to record with other rappers for features, it does have many negative sides as well. Atlanta has the highest crime rate involving rappers. Once arriving in Atlanta, King Vong's manager secured an Airbnb before heading to the club. King Vong was acting strange the moment he stepped in Atlanta, as said by the people with him that day. According to Vong's manager, King Vong was glued to his cell phone all night at the club, which is very unlike him. Turns out, someone told King Vong while at the club that rappers Quando Rondo and Lil Tim were in Atlanta. Quando Rondo and Lil Tim are artists signed to NBA YoungBoy's label, who Vong was having huge beef with at the time. After the celebration party, they all start driving to the Airbnb. Halfway to the Airbnb, King Von tells the driver of his car to turn around and go to this lounge called Monaco. At this lounge, Quando Rondo just so happened to be there, parked in the parking lot, taking a nap in his McLaren. When arriving to the lounge, King Von sat in his SUV for around 20 to 30 minutes, not speaking to anyone, just on his phone. King Von's manager, 100K Track, then called security and the boys from O Block to get over there immediately. When they arrived, they noticed Quando Rondo standing in the middle of the street besides a white SUV. Once hearing the news, King Von was then seen hopping out of his SUV and walking into the middle of the street where a white SUV was which had Quando Rondo standing beside. King Von and his crew then start swarming Rondo in the middle of the street and a brawl breaks out. King Von and Quando Rondo are going at it in the middle of the street with no firearms being used. This is until Rondo's best friend, Lil Tim, hops out of the white SUV, pulls a firearm out, and uses it towards King Von to defend Quando Rondo. With the sound of firearms being used in the area, undercover cops that were parked down the street start creeping up to the location and started lighting up the area. It was described as a war zone in the middle of the streets. Firearms are being used from all over the place and people are running behind cars, ducking for cover. While all this was going down, King Von and Quando Rondo are still out in the middle of the street. King Von's friend, Muwap, then runs over to Von, knocks Quando Rondo out of the way, and grabs King Von and helps him into the getaway vehicle. Sadly, in the getaway vehicle, they didn't get to the hospital fast enough, which sadly had King Von pass in the process. While driving him to the hospital for medical attention, the same group they had just had this altercation with went to the same hospital. Members of the crew were hit with the firearms used by the undercover police from down the street. According to those involved, a second altercation almost then broke out in the hospital parking lot, but law enforcement were already there and waiting. Rapper Lil Tim, who did the act towards King Von, was arrested while in a hospital bed getting medical attention, handcuffed to the bed and couldn't leave. He was brought into jail for the passing of King Von before shortly being released on bond as his lawyers are claiming Lil Tim was defending Quando Rondo's life. Quando Rondo did an interview online. He stated in that interview he was scared for his life and had an out-of-body experience. He thanks Lil Tim for saving his life. A few months after King Von's passing, law enforcement came close to solving the passing of K.I. Kira, otherwise known as K.I.'s father, passed at a young age, forcing her to live with her mom and brother on 63rd Street in Chicago. 63rd home of famous rapper FBG Duck is O Block's biggest rivals in Chicago. With K.I. being seen in FBG Duck's early music videos, this made O Block members know what crew she was with. King Von, who was 17 at the time, ran into K.I. for the first time on a public train. King Von and his crew dealt with K.I. without the use of firearms, mocking the situation on Twitter and heating things up between the two blocks. With things heating up, K.I. would lose her cousin named Taekwon Tyler, who was a little brother to her. She cried all night and made a promise online she would avenge him. At this time, King Von would tweet at her every morning before eventually noticing her at a local corner store. King Von and his crew approached the store before the owner quickly locked the doors. Von would then tweet this when he left. Around this time, theories were floating around that K.I. avenged her cousin Taekwon and was involved with the passing of two O Block members. King Von knew what needed to be done. In April of 2014, 63rd was having a barbecue celebrating the life of a past member. King Von got word about the celebration and made a move. Around 1:30 p.m. on 63rd Street, King Von drove down, exiting his vehicle and walked down an alley between the neighbor's house before peeking up and using his firearm towards a group of 20 people. K.I. passed during the situation and was never found guilty until he sadly passed. King Von's life in and out of jail was always exciting. The street life in Chicago is no joke when you learn what actually goes on. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe.